So this topic will be talking about growing up as a PK. So right now, first I would like to introduce Max, if he can join me on the panel. Everyone give him a round of applause. Anyway, thank you for joining me. And next up, I would like to also introduce to the panel Thompson, aka BlessBless, to the panel. Are your mics good?
Hello? You hear me? Oh, no one said anything. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, we can hear. It's working.
Let's. Is it working? Let's see.
Song?
No. Well, so we're just here to discuss with my fellow brothers what it is like growing up. So I'm going to start with a light-hearted question right now. And the question is, what is the funniest or most awkward thing your parent has ever said about you during a sermon?
I need a month to come back to you on that. There's so much. Most awkwardest thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe like just talking about how I was as a child, and nappy changing and using those kind of like memories as a sermon content.
Yeah.
And then I'm there hearing it, and then it gets worse when people then turn around and look at me whilst they're talking about that. But
Yeah.
I think that made me awkward. That made things awkward. So I think that's probably right now the first thing that comes into my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. My mom does that to me a lot. What about you, Thompson?
Yeah, it's always the childhood thing, and one she has this. She's very dramatic, especially being in Nigeria, very dramatic. So she always talk about the pregnancy, the pain that she went through, the pain that I put her through. I think it's not my fault now. It's on your stomach, you understand? So yeah, she always go about the pain, about the 9 month, and then she's like, oh, this, So yeah, it's always a bit about her and the pain that I put her through the process of the 9 months, as if I was the one that told her to have me. But yeah, it's always that, and the whole church be looking at me thinking, hey, this one's a trouble. But yeah, that's the main thing.
There was one time I was in the car with my sister and I was telling my mom, did I ask you to born me? Yeah, so let's get into it. So to the both of you, did your family manage to separate church life from home life, or did they just completely blend together?
For me, they blend together, unfortunately, because they're supposed to be separate life. You know what I'm saying? Being a minister, you come to church and then they're at home, but the character of your individual parents, they see you. They don't, when it comes to how they're pastor, no, they know you as you're their son. They don't just see you as, oh, you're a child of God, or do you know what I mean? They will discipline you as their own born child. So to me, I didn't see no separation. So the way she would treat me, maybe in church, in front of congregation, she'd be more nice, like, God bless you, my son, etc. But when you get home, it's a completely different thing. So it's just the perspective of the expectation of, you're my son at home, so when you come to church, you need to be my son too. You need to make sure that you help me, because I gave birth to you, I've looked after you, I've nourished you. So therefore, when you're at home, I want that same respect. And when you're in church, I want that same respect. So it's kind of like, as a son, I need to perform my duty both in church and both at home with no difference, according to my experience.
Yeah, that's years, Max.
Could you repeat the question?
So basically, how did your parents separate home life and church life, and how did it blend together? Yeah.
They actually never separated it. They were just, I don't think they were intentionally trying to separate it, if you know what I mean. It's not something that they, okay, let's take off our uniform when we get to the house and just, no, it was just a thing where like mentally, I think it's the other way around. Let's put on our uniform and then go to the church. So how they were like at home was like free, like Wild Wild West in a way. Like it's just, you know, I always say my parents are children, you know, to someone else.
Yeah.
And like sometimes like their growing up has made them a certain way. And I feel like when we're not at church, those ways that they were like, them expressing themselves, them doing this, them doing that, sometimes it was a bit toxic. So for me, it was like them going to church was putting on that uniform, changing things up. But when they were at home, they were themselves, which sometimes wasn't great for me. Them being themselves. And I think I've mentioned before, that's one of the reasons why, you know, I looked at it as fake. You know, the church and the culture, because you act one way, and then when you know, put on that uniform, you act another way. One specific memory, sometimes when I'm at church here, like my mum's character shows, the home virgin shows. Yeah. So she'll be like, and then she'll do that face, like no one else saw it but me, that kind of thing. And it's like, because seeing that made me realize, okay, there's a virgin that she's put on. Okay. Which, like I said, it's like wearing that uniform when you go to church. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's very good answers, very powerful answers. So the next question: do you ever? I mean, you know, the PK stereotype usually swings between two extremes: the perfect angel or the wild rebel. Did you ever feel pushed toward one of those tags?
I'll say in the church, within the church community, I was more of the perfect golden child that support the ministry, and you know, so I was pushing that angle because obviously I would support my mother, even if she was my mother. The fact that I got desire to be a preacher, so obviously my ministry kind of in line with her vision as well. Yeah. So I was more of the supportive child towards her ministry. So I was more of, you know, it's a son that support me, that love me. So I was more portrayed to that innocent in that sense. So that worked well for me in that sense. Yeah. But I wasn't really the rebellious kind of child. I didn't experience that one.
Yeah, I would say I was definitely rebellious. Maybe not as much in the church, outside of the church. In the church, I was always, because I knew how I was like, I would always keep myself busy at the church. So that, you know, that side doesn't come out, I guess. Or so that I don't think I was that spiritual when I was young in the church. So because I was a PK child, it's like it comes with, it's supposed to come with you being the child of a pastor, and I feel like because of that, I just ran away from it. So the running away looked like me, you know, playing the drums looked like me, just doing the bins outside and just finding myself busy so that you don't have a conversation about scripture with me, or you don't see me at Sunday school, and that was me running away, me keeping myself busy. But outside of that, I think very much rebellious.
Yeah, because normally you get to see those how can I describe it? The stereotypes that PKs are like this or they're like that. They're either the good child or either they're very rebellious and whatnot. So it's a very interesting stereotype because it's like two polar opposites. You're either one or the other. So I would like to ask you guys, how do we break that stigma within the church community?
I would say conversations. I think parents having conversations with their children before it's pastors having conversations with their children. You know, it's definitely important because, you know, also being able to answer questions. You know, I've said this before, like, you know, when my parents were very prideful. So like sometimes you would ask them a question,
Yeah.
you know, like, you ask why and they said Z, kind of thing. And it's like, no, for real, like what is the answer to that? But they all say Z, and Z represents pride.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a case of they don't actually know, so they say Z.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a case of them actually knowing the answer, but they don't like the question, so they say Z. So for me, it's told me in the future as an adult that having conversations with your children, answering questions, these kind of little things help nurture your children for sure. Because there's children that are they're thinking a lot.
Yeah.
And they don't do, well, they do, but later on. But in those moments, they're thinking a lot.
Yeah.
And in order for us to actually like find out what's in their head, not finding out that this wayward son is in gangs or this one is doing this, doing that. Find out what your children are thinking through conversations. So I feel like that's definitely something that is lacked now, and hopefully something like this can bring more awareness to those parents and those PK imposters.
Yeah. So Thompson, I'd like to ask you, since you said that he was pretty much like the golden child. So how do you control narratives within your church community? Because they may see you as the golden child, but do you feel like it's a bit of a high standard? You're also like trying to work out your salvation as a Christian, a young Christian, and it makes it a bit difficult to live up to those high standards. How would you speak to that church community?
Yeah, definitely, because it affects you mentally as well. Like, going back to mental health, because it's like a lot of pressure is put on you, especially if you're a young man or a young lady, and having this pressure of this, you will present something that you also working or fighting yourself for. And it's like when you become that PK, it's like you need to, the way you speak to people, the way you conduct, it's like you feel like the whole world is watching you. Do you understand? There's so much pressure, like, do you know what I'm saying? And sometimes you feel like you can't be yourself. It affects your relationships in the church. It affects your relationship with people. It affects your mindset. So you really have to be really strong, because even when you fall, it's like you're not just falling for yourself. You're falling for everyone else.
Yeah.
You understand? So it's a really big pressure, and it's like people don't really understand that, because they say, "Oh yeah, he's doing well," but like you don't know what he's going through or what she's going through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no, about to work out your own salvation, because at the end of the day, it's not about anyone else.
Yeah.
It's between you and God. At the end of the day, so you always have to show this kind of, even there's times when I don't even feel like preaching, I don't even feel like encouraging someone, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I know the fact that it's not me just having to do it, it's a way of me like focusing on what the vision and the bigger picture is. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like me going to preach when I don't feel like preaching, I feel like I'm being obedient to God as well. And at the same time, I realize myself when I do that, stepping out of faith, it's kind of like I'm encouraging myself too. So in a way, it kind of helps me not to give up in myself and my vision.
Yeah, wow. It's two powerful answers. I'm gonna ask you both one more question, and then we're gonna open up the floor for people to ask you questions for the next 10 minutes. What was the hardest part about seeing the behind the scenes of, being a pastor's kid? Because you get to see what like your parents go through, and like you can't really do nothing about it because you're the pastor's child, and you have to let them go through that battle yourself. So what was your views on behind the scenes? Yeah.
For me, I think behind the scene is the most challenging battle ever, because it's like, because obviously you have your own times when your mom or your dad might annoy you or say certain things. We both our own parents, and do you know what I mean? And then you have to go to church and you have to look at them in the eyes. Do you know what I mean? So having that personal honor your mother, honor your father, at the same time, when you come to the church now, you have to put that aside and be like, you know what, we're in church, let's be respectful. But at the same time, it hurts because you know that she just done something crazy to you. Now she's all preaching, hallelujah, praise the Lord. When she's not giving that same grace at home. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I feel like it's very challenging in that angle because you're thinking the way you're showing love to your congregation, show me that love in it.
Yeah.
The way you're showing grace to your congregation, show me that grace too. Like, practice what you preach. Because sometimes your parents can preach, but what they practice to you is completely different sometimes. So that's the way I say it. So that's my challenge. Just continue, just be consistency with what they're preaching.
Yeah. Same to you, Max.
Yeah, I think with my parent, I didn't have the benefits of my church starting early. It always started later on during the day, like around 2. So I had a whole 7 hours where madnesses are happening. So everything's fresh when I go to church. If it was in the morning, maybe it would be great at church. But you know, my church always started like 2 o'clock, so everything was fresh. My mum slapped me with that pillow in the morning to wake me up. My mum was creative. She would pour cold water on the pillow and slap me with the pillow. That kind of thing. So, but yeah, the behind the scenes, I think like the word pastor in itself, when you see your parents pastoring, not the church, but more the people in the church, it's like you feel like, why can't you pastor me like that? Like why is pastors only limited to just the people in the church? What about them? Your children? You know, there's ways that you can nurture through, you know, those pastoral ways. In fact, it should even be heightened, you know. And I just feel like I had a lot of pastoral PK friends because my dad had a lot of his friends that were pastors. So everyone was a pastor back then. But he had a lot of pastor friends, so I had a lot of PK friends. So I saw how it was the right way, I guess. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of how it should be, and I'm getting the opposite version. So so for me, it was just more like, how come you could do it to them, but you can't do it to me? And it just pushed that whole mindset around fake. And that's why I went to the roads, because it was real. And those was one of the reasons. It was the behind the scenes that drove that mindset in a negative way for me. So
Okay, that was brilliant for the both of them. Please give them a round of applause. So I'm gonna open the floor for the next 10 minutes for anyone who has questions for them. Please ask them. So has anyone got any questions? Yeah, sure.
Question to both of you. I guess what I'm interested in, obviously there was a lot of questions you had that I'll probably have asked, but more the dynamic between yourselves and peers or other children growing up as a PK, what that dynamic was like. Did you feel a sense of responsibility? Was there politics being the pastor's kid? I just want to get some insights from both of you. Thank you.
So, well, growing up around that kind of environment I feel like there's always a policy around it as well, because everyone have this kind of expectation on how you should behave, on how you should act, or how you should conduct yourself. And it's like, in Romans 12 verse 1, it says, do not be conformed to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. But growing up as a PK, it's like you're conformed now to the expectation of people. You understand? So it's like your identity is like taken away from you, because now you're living up the expectation of the people around you and the expectation of pastors and ministers. And my encouragement to people that are growing up in that environment is like, don't allow the world to kind of take away your identity, because you become something or someone that you might hate. You understand? It's so important that you have to identify who you are and then let people see that in you, because you get lost when you begin to look at how people view you. You understand? So it's so important as you're growing up as a PK to understand your identity. What is your character? Who are you? Find who you are. Otherwise, you're going to get lost inside this kind of wall of expectation of our people, and then you become not real to yourself, and then you will lose your salvation because of people's expectation.
I don't know how to really. I was just always myself. So I didn't even really think about the whole politics of stuff. I was always myself when I was outside of the church. And then, like I said earlier, I would always just hide in other things when I was at the church. I think I think maybe I could answer it based off of like what the parents, the parents would say, or the parents, how they would be. And I think like when it came to like dialogues with, I remember one time when I was just like doing stupid stuff on the road, right? And I remember seeing one of the parents that went to the church, and like they just looked at me like the get out person, Daniel. I was so shocked. I was like, I had to take a breather, and then in that moment, I just like realized that, oh, yeah, like I've been exposed. They know this version. Like it's almost like Superman. Like when he changes, to that uniform, and then when he changes to the Superman. Like I felt like that in a way, but it was the reverse. Like roads, red, white, red, and in that home church, you read something different, and it's like they saw me. They saw a different version of me. And then I remember for a whole 2 weeks, because she didn't come to church in that week. It was the following week. I was so scared that she was just gonna, let people know about that suit I was wearing. And I was just so in fear for it, so in fear. And then when I remember when I saw her, the woman just acted normal. She just acted normal. And it just made me like realize, like it actually made me realize that the two differences. Like it made me realize it, and I think the more I realized the two differences, the more I was like, oh, okay, this is actually fake, and this is why I'm trying to go down this route. So what I would definitely say for like people that are like us, because I feel like nowadays everyone is a PK child somewhere. Like I would say just be yourself, and just like try and create the opportunity for conversation, and vice versa. Those people that are being the political ones, just be yourself and ask the questions. Be bold enough, because also ultimately we want to help each other, whether we fall in or to lift us up. We want to help each other, and I think the best way to do that is to create dialogue. Don't keep it in your mind and then gossip. Let out so it doesn't become that. Yeah, that's probably the best way I could answer.
Any more questions?
Thank you. What would you say are what can pastors or people from Christian households, what can parents do to create a dialogue between their children and themselves, to create that space of safety? And also, obviously as PKs, you have your own journey to find Christ as well. So another question is, how did you find Christ aside from being in the church? Yeah.
So for me, with pastors, ministers, having their children, I feel like one thing you need to do is let them breathe. Like, do you know what I mean? Just let them breathe. Take away the pressure from them. Let them make mistakes and let them learn. Because sometimes you're trying to make your child to be so perfect. They need to do this, they need to read, they need to come to church. But let them have their own, let them walk their own walk. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, we're parents, I know we can be so protective and we're trying to make our children, do the right thing. But by you trying to force it on them, you kind of cause them to rebel. So let them breathe. Like when they make a mistake, like help them, encourage them. They know for themselves that they're not perfect, they make mistakes too. And obviously, so I feel like just allow them to breathe, allow them to work at their own salvation. Stop working at your salvation for them. Let them make the mistake and show them correction, show them love, And with myself is my own personal journey is that I knew Christ before my mom became a minister. And I just kind of, studied the word through what I went through when I was as a child. I just begin to study the word for myself, encourage myself in the word. And then later in life, when my mother became a minister, it kind of in line with what I was doing. So I just decided to support her in her ministry. But that decision turned into something else. It's like, I have to be there now. Do you know what I mean? But God's grace, I guess. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yes, the first thing I would say is I wanted to talk about like being selective with how you surrender. I think like my parents, I always saw them selecting how to surrender when it came to church related things. And I think that isn't great to do that, because you got to live, when you live in the word, when you live in with Christ, you don't have to have a Bible study to do a Bible study. You don't have to be in worship to surrender. And I think I was only seeing that at church. I was only seeing that on the Wednesday at Bible studies. I wasn't seeing that daily. So I think for me, I would have found Christ properly as a child if they were mirroring it every day with their lifestyle, So I actually found Christ a lot later. But what I would say to start to your question is about creating a space to have conversations with your children. Create like a decoy. I always say create some. Like I remember this because of like when I was dating. I was always nervous about being a man that lacks substance. When I'm dating with a girl, like the first 5 minutes is great, and then 2 weeks later you're bored. I used to have that fear. So what I used to do is I used to go to places that have entertainment. So that's the decoy. So the reason why I'm saying all of this is like, just create, as a parent, as a pastor, create a decoy to then be able to have conversations with your children. First of all, your children are smart, especially with AI and all that jazz. They're smart enough to know exactly what you're trying to do. So I think if you're just doing something that they don't see, is you trying to force a conversation, then you naturally have a conversation whilst they're doing the thing. I think that would be great to unravel what they're thinking, unravel what they thought about something that happened or whatever it is. And people underestimate walks, man. Walks are brilliant. Just go for a walk, Go for a walk and don't even talk. And then talk at the end. So just create decoys to then, suit your agenda, which is, having a dialogue. And then just going to the last thing, which is talking about, the relationship that I had with Christ. I had that later on. I think the word intentional, I probably didn't know how to spell it when I was young. But when I was older, I understood what intentional was about. So it just gave me that drive, minus the zeal that I had because I became Christian, but I had that drive through just being more intentional about our Father. And I think that's what made me, without even realizing, closer to him, more intimate with him. And then the fruit from it is whatever you saw or whatever you see. So so that's probably the best way I can answer that as well. So.
Wow, that's brilliant. The 10 minutes are up, but let's all give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, Thompson. Thank you so much, Max, for your time and your conversation. It's really important that we have these conversations and, try to spread it amongst not just PKs, but people around the world, because we're all young adults trying to figure out our walk with Christ, trying to figure out working out our own salvation. So conversations like these does not just help the PKs, but it helps an unbeliever or a believer altogether. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you.